my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, the Reverend Stephen McAfee.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you all. Oh, wasn't the music awesome today? Maybe it was just right for me, but I loved it. That was great. Thank you. So, what does it mean to love one another? Anybody know? Sorry. Anyway, so I thought, that's, as I talked about last week, and we talked about a lot here, love is really important in our spiritual journey. It's important in our lives. And the Bible talks about it a lot. There are multiple commandments about it, to love one another, to love your neighbor as yourself, to love the Lord your God. There's lots of love commandments. There's even statements about really simple and direct, God is love. So we kind of get that. And when we feel love, or are loving, our life's loving. So what about all the times that's hard to do? What about all the times we don't know how to do it? Or what that means to do? So I thought I'd give you a few examples from the life of Jesus and a couple little ones from mine. Not that they're anything remotely alike, but I have some examples as well. So the first thing that I want to point out, this is actually from Paul's letter, and we've read that recently in here, but it's from 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient and kind. Sometimes right off the bat, patience is a little tough, don't you think? For me, sometimes it is. Kind, usually not too hard for me. Sometimes harder than others, but usually not too hard for me. Love is not jealous. I'm blessed, I guess, not to have any cause for jealousy, so that's a great thing. Love does not brag. I won't tell you how to do on that one. Love is not arrogant. Also, no comment. It does not act disgracefully. It does not seek its own benefit. It is not easily provoked, and it keeps no account of wrongs suffered. So those are some clues as to what love is and what love isn't. And then we have a bunch of examples from Jesus. And most of the examples from Jesus fit with what we think about love. And I don't know what you think about it, but when I think of it, I think love is nice. It's warm and fuzzy. Love makes you feel good. Love always tries to comfort you and reassure you. Love is always gentle with you. Love is always forgiving no matter what you do. I tend to have those ideas about love, and those certainly are part of love. Jesus sometimes does other things that, if we look at those, we think, what? So I'm going to share just a couple of those with you. But I'm going to do the familiar ones first. So the forgiveness idea and the non-judgmental idea. In the law of Moses, if someone was caught in adultery, they were to be stoned to death. Literally, stoned to death. And so there's an incident recounted in the New Testament where a woman is caught in adultery. You notice it doesn't say what happened to the man. I don't know why that is. Maybe he was already dead. Maybe they caught him. It's like, okay, you're next. Who knows? We don't know the whole story. But maybe he got out of town. Whatever it was. But this woman is about to be stoned to death because she's committed a capital crime in Jewish law. And Yeshua comes upon the group about to administer that law and stone her to death. And there is no point in the entire New Testament where Jesus ever says not to do the law of Moses. There's no point in the New Testament where he ever contradicts the law of Moses. Not ever. He encourages people to do it. What he does is give a deeper understanding of that law and a more internally applied law. For example, he talks about don't murder people. But then he says, that's not enough. Also, don't hold hate in your heart. Because that's what these actions stem from. So we have to get past the actions to the inner motivation. So he goes to a deeper level with it, but he never contradicts it. So he even right then doesn't say to them, that's wrong, you should never do that. He doesn't even address the law at all. He doesn't even address right and wrong at all. What what he does when he comes up to them is he says, whoever is among you without sin, you start by casting the first stone. Which causes people to think about themselves and their own behaviors and actions. Which is one of the things good teachers always do for us. How does this apply to you? How well do you deal with this? And they help us see that. Because sometimes we don't want to look at that. Somebody one time asked Gandhi why he was so patient with people in the world who did bad things. And he said, because I struggle with that in myself all the time. I'm familiar with the battle. So, this is some examples from Jesus. So, when he does that, all those people leave. And now she's just standing there, a woman who was, by all accounts, guilty of committing adultery. Now she's standing there with him, and all the other people have left. And he says, where are your accusers? And she said, there are none. And he says, neither do I accuse you. So, forgiveness of something that was considered a really serious transgression. But then he adds something to it. He doesn't just stop there. He adds something to it. And basically, I'm paraphrasing now, says, don't do that anymore. Stop it. What he says literally is, go and sin no more. Because he doesn't make it okay that she did that. Forgiveness does not mean approval. It does not condone actions that are being forgiven. That's a really important distinction that we have. Other examples of forgiveness. He, in the Lord's Prayer, when he's telling the disciples how to pray, one of the lines is, forgive our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. So there's a conditional clause there, even though we don't often think of it that way. What that's actually saying is, we will be forgiven only as we forgive others. Not will be forgiven no matter what we do if we don't forgive others. The phrase is, forgive us our transgressions as we forgive those who transgress against us. So it's a conditional clause. But forgiveness is really important here. He also goes so far in Matthew 5, as far as Sermon on the Mount, to say, if you are about to go to the altar, here we are. So you were about to come here this morning. And before you go, you remember that your brother has something against you. You're not supposed to come to church and pray about it. Which is what we might say. What, everybody get warm back there? Sorry, there's a few people chilling, so they have to. So it says, if you're going to go to the altar and you remember your brother has something against you, leave your altar, leave your offering, and first, before you go to the altar, go to your brother and reconcile with him. First. Now, to my way of thinking, it would make sense to go to the altar first and pray about it, and then try to go deal with the upset. That would make sense to me. That's frankly how I would probably do it. But there's a reason Yeshua doesn't say to do it that way. In whom does God reside? Everybody. So if you have something against your brother, who do you have something against? God. So first reconcile with that God spark that you aren't getting along with. And clear that. Then come with your whole self to the altar. There's a reason he gave it in that order. I want to tell you a short story. I have told this here once, a long time ago, but I'm telling it again now. We were at Pearl Harbor many, many years ago, and they have a memorial to the World War II attack on Pearl Harbor. The Arizona is still sunk there. Arizona is still leaking oil. You can still see it coming out. And they have tours of Pearl Harbor, where you take a little boat right out in Arizona and around the base, and they talk to you about what happened on December 7th. The people that lead that, called docents, and they're all volunteers. And the day we were there, the man leading it was much older, and in the course of his telling us about Pearl Harbor and the tour, he said that he was a serviceman on one of the battleships in Pearl Harbor on December 7th and watched his brother and his best friend both die. And so it was a really powerful moment in the tour. After the tour, there were some people just talking to him, including us, after the tour. And they were thanking him for volunteering and all that. And he said, it's getting harder and harder. In that era, in the early 90s, Japan was buying up a whole lot of Hawaiian real estate. And Japan was coming in big time commercially in Hawaii. And so there were lots and lots and lots of Japanese tourists, and lots of them went to Pearl Harbor. And he said, I can barely do this job anymore because if I have Japanese people in my tour group, I won't take them. I make somebody else take them because I hate them. I will always hate them. And it seemed understandable. But that's really where he was. And then he told us, not as part of the tour, but afterwards, he told us that changed recently. There was a Japanese man, an older Japanese man, that came on my tour with me. And I was told that there was nobody else to take him, so he had to be part of my group. So I took him, tried not to talk to him, tried not to answer any questions, tried not to look at him. Got through the tour, was hoping he'd just fade away and leave, and afterwards he came straight up to me. And he said, I heard you were serving here that day. I said, I was. And he said, I was a captain of the first wave of airplanes that attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7th. I led the first wave. And after the war, I had an experience. And I decided to dedicate my life to God. And God said to do that, I had to find every survivor of Pearl Harbor I could find and closely apologize to him. And he said, so I'm here to ask if you can forgive me. And the man who was the docent said, something just melted in me. And we both started crying and just holding on to each other. And all of that hate has been gone since then. So that was an important teaching in Jesus' life. And it's not a nice idea. And it's not a nice philosophy. It is a powerful, real thing that love can do. So that's one example. Another example is demonstrating kindness. And there were more than one occasion where little children, some of whom you saw this morning, little children who came up to Jesus to sit in his lap while he was teaching and talking, the adults were really annoyed. It's like, would you parents get out? You know, he's trying to talk to us. We're grown-ups. He's trying to talk to them. And every time that happened, he chastised the adults, not the children, and said, let them come to me. So that was another example of demonstrating what love is. The couple other examples I'm going to give you that are not warm and fuzzy. I'll start with an easy one. That love holds us accountable for our actions. Even though there is such a thing as forgiveness, we are accountable for what we do. And if we make excuses for that behavior, well, the world does it, well, that's what I was taught, well, that's how I was treated, well, look what they did to me first. All those excuses we make. We can make whatever excuses you want, but we're still accountable for our choices. So, in Matthew 16:27, Jesus says flat out, the Son of Man will always repay every person according to their deeds. What they do, not what they think, not what they believe, what they do. Now, let me tell you another short story. You have this fisherman named Simon, and Jesus later calls him Peter, actually Cephas in Aramaic, but anyway, calls him Peter the rock. And Peter becomes the key spokesperson for the 12 apostles. He's the leader of the 12 apostles. He's the personal protector of Jesus when they travel. He's a very influential figure in his life, and he's really close to Jesus, and for 3 years he's with him all the time. And then Jesus announces to his apostles that they're going to Jerusalem for the Passover, which is going to be very dangerous because by then he's famous, Many of the rabbis of Sanhedrin are against him, Rome is against him. It's a dangerous place to go at a dangerous time of year, so they don't want him to go. So Peter says, don't do this, don't go there. And this Peter whom he loves and to whom he entrusts the leadership of all his apostles, Jesus says to him something warm and fuzzy, like, I understand, Peter, it's okay. Don't worry, things are going to be fine. No. He says, get behind me, Satan. Your heart is not set on God, but on the ways of men. Get away from me. Warm and fuzzy? I don't think so. Not loving? Is that an example of Jesus being not loving and mean? Or is that an example of love being demonstrated in a way that we don't like to think of it? Is it love being demonstrated in a way that we don't like to do, but sometimes are called to do? There's somebody that I know that recently had for years and years and years been struggling with alcohol, and somebody finally said to them, you need to get help or don't come back. That was, I'm sure, not a very easy thing to say to them, and I'm sure it was not a very easy thing to hear. But you know what happened to the alcoholic now? They're sober. They're committed to staying sober, and their entire life, where they live, what they do, who they hang out with, how they do things, is completely turned around. If they'd have been warm and fuzzy, it's okay if you take a drink now and then. Hey, I understand you have a lot of stress. Don't worry about it. It's okay. You can't help it. Would that have helped? No. So there are times that love is also willing to confront, and it's not often easy for us. I'll give you one more warm and fuzzy example of Jesus. He's talking now to the priests in the temple, and he's trying to explain to them that they're misleading people, that they're serving their own ego and power, that they're not actually working on behalf of God anymore. And in the process of doing this, he says this to them in Matthew 12. You brood of vipers, can you ever say anything good being so evil? Nice, comforting, reassuring statement. Right? You know who these people were he was talking to? They weren't just priests, they weren't just religious authorities. He did not, contrary to what people have thought, have a problem with authorities. He did not. He had a problem with hypocrisy. And when people were pretending to be something they weren't, or when I'm up here telling you to live in a certain way that I don't live, or I'm up here judging you for things that you're doing that I'm also doing but you don't know about, that's what he was speaking against. And that kind of spiritual arrogance and that kind of hypocrisy causes huge problems in our relationship with one another and in our community structure. And Jesus was really adamant about pointing that out. And he pointed it out to anybody that he felt was guilty of that. The other thing that he told to his personal apostles, the other thing love does that many of us don't like, we don't like it when it happens to us and we don't like doing it to others, but love also imposes boundaries. Love is not a boundless, love is boundless, but the behaviors we have need to have boundaries. And love will impose those. Give you a tiny example. When I was, I don't want to say middle school, I don't remember. But when I was younger, I was at the stage where boys were mowing the lawn, maybe girls too, but back then boys were mowing the lawn. And it was one of my jobs. And there was a party coming up that weekend on Saturday with some friends of mine at their house. And I asked my dad if I could go. And he knew the parents, he knew the situation, blah, blah, blah. And he said, yes, you can go to the party. However, you have to mow the lawn this week before you go. Don't forget that. And I said, oh, I won't. He said, if you don't mow the lawn, you don't go to the party. Yeah, no problem. So I was really keen on going to the party. So Monday, did I mow the lawn? Had stuff to do, played. There'll be plenty of time Tuesday. Tuesday, did I mow the lawn? No. You get the picture, right? The week went on and on and on. Always something more fun to do. Didn't want to mow the lawn. Finally, it's almost time for the party. Is the lawn mowed? No. Am I really looking forward to the party? Yes. Is it a big deal party? Yes. Is it going to be a lot of fun? Yes. Is it going to be like social standing and everybody has there from the school? Yes. Do I get to go? No. Am I happy about that? No. What do I want my dad to say? It's okay, honey, you don't need to mow the lawn. I know you're really going to miss out on the party. Go ahead, have a great time. Does he say that? No. He said, what was our deal? I said, I had to mow the lawn before I could go to the party. Did you do it? No. Then you're not going. What's unfair about this, son? And there wasn't anything. So, whether you think that's good parenting or bad parenting, made an impression on me. And I began to learn that my choices have consequences. And if I don't like the consequences, what should I do? Make different choices. That's still true for me. If I happen to, some of you know, I happen to really like pizza. If I decide to have pizza at midnight tonight, I'm old, if you notice. If I have pizza at midnight tonight, I can tell you what's going to happen about 2 a.m. And it ain't going to be happy. It's not going to be found pleasant. And if I don't like that consequence, I have to make a different choice and do what? Not eat pizza after midnight. When I was 20, I could eat pizza at 2 o'clock in the morning and make a difference. Can't do it now. So I have to make different choices. The other thing Jesus said to his apostles, because lots of them were vying for positions of importance. Believe it or not, read the New Testament, many of them were vying for, we want to be the most important one. Which seems kind of silly now, but back then, mind you, back then Jesus was not a worldwide figure. Jesus was not somebody everybody knew. And nobody knew the end of the story because it hadn't been written yet. So everything we know about it, none of them knew anything. So it wasn't a big deal. But they're all trying to be important. And at one point he says to them, not many of you should ever become teachers. To the people he appointed to carry on his work. Not many of you should ever become teachers. Because those who teach will be called to account with much stricter judgment. Now, any of you who have ever been up here or in a position in a community of leadership of some kind, look at the people who are well known in the world, whether they're politicians or celebrities or people of state or whatever they are. Look at the media and how everything they do is judged. If they do something, this is a media example for you. This is years ago, before any of today's media. Years ago. I had a friend who was talking about reincarnation at a church one time. And there was a local reporter there. And my friend was talking about John the Baptist and preparing the way for the Messiah. And he said in many ways, the kind of work we're doing now in spiritual organizations is like that of John the Baptist. We're trying to prepare the world for a new consciousness, a new age, a new way of doing things. So it's sort of like that work. So the next day in the Metro section of the local Grand Rapids paper, it says, local man claims to be a reincarnation of John the Baptist. Which he didn't. So he contacted the paper, and then there was a new headline in the next day's Metro section. It said, local man now denies having been reincarnated as John the Baptist. When we're in a serious vein, when we are teaching people, whether it's as a minister, whether it's in any way, when we're teaching people, we have this accountability for what we do. Because we're not now just choosing for us, we're actually trying to influence choices and directions people take. That's a serious responsibility. What if everything I tell you is wrong? What if everything that I direct you to do or suggest you do or try to inspire you to do is not what you should be doing? So we have responsibilities to try to stay on track. Not that we're ever going to be perfect or flawless in this, at least me, but we have a responsibility to stay on track. to the best of our ability. And when we see ourselves getting off track, we need to correct that, because it's important what we do. Parents are the same. For those of you with kids, you know, my dad, now I have to tell you, in the lawn mowing incident, if my mom had been in charge, I'd have gone to the park. All I had to do is put on sand face, and my mom would go, oh, boy, go ahead. You know? So, I'm grateful actually that she wasn't the one in charge of it. I would have preferred it, but in the long run, it was better that my dad was in charge. Here's another thing, is that sometimes I see this sometimes, and people think it's love, and I don't, so it's good here. People sometimes have the idea that when Jesus says don't judge somebody, that we should not get involved with other people's situations. And that, as they say, as some people say, who've taken a little bit of Eastern teachings into their philosophy, well, it's their karma, we shouldn't interfere with that karma. Well, guess what? You are involved with other people's situations. We're all involved with each other here in this church. You're involved with people in your community, you're involved with people at your work, you're involved with people in your family. We are involved with each other. That is what it is to be a human being. We are connected. We're involved with each other. Whether we want to be or not, we are involved with each other. So this is from the book of Acts. On the following day, there was another fight in the community. And I don't think they meant physical fight, but I don't know. I think they meant big dissension and argument. And so, Peter went to them to try to reconcile them to peace. So Peter's now getting involved in this conflict to try to help with the conflict. And Peter says to them, my brothers, why do you keep injuring each other? That's a good question today, too, for almost any day of the week, isn't it? Why do you keep injuring each other? But the one who was injuring his neighbor pushed him away and said, who made you our judge? And would have none of it. So sometimes when we try to bring peace to situations, the people involved just aren't having it. They just won't listen. They don't want to do it. But if we can bring peace present somewhere, if you look at the life of Yeshua, if there was something going on, like the woman about to be stoned in adultery, which was lawful, like Romans doing something they shouldn't have done to people, like people in the community arguing with them, he brought that presence into that situation. So we have a responsibility to participate in the communities we're involved in, to the best of our ability, and to bring peace and to bring wisdom to those situations. However we can do that. The last piece that I'll share about how we love one another. We have different facets of our being. We have a facet that, I don't know if you want to call it ego or the human self or what you want to call it, but we have these different facets. One of them is the spiritual essence in us, this Christ light in us. One of them is this other thing in us that feeds our ego and our selfishness and our power, and whatever you want to call that. So, when we are engaged, one of the ways that we can love one another is to try to pay attention to when it's the ego in us pushing or when it's the love in us motivating. Because they're not the same. And they will have very different outcomes depending on which one you listen to. So part of how we love each other is if somebody does something, and right away, here's a clue by the way, somebody does something and right away you are triggered and you go into reaction. You go into reaction for somebody, no, I'm going to defend this person, or no, I'm going to hit that person. As soon as you have that reaction, guess what? Guess what's involved with that? And how did I do this? Oh, here we go. Sorry, I got myself tangled up. See? Right away, I got myself tangled up. As soon as you feel that happening, that's not the Christ life in you. It doesn't work that way. clarity and calmness. So it can see what's actually happening, and it can be calm enough to listen to that spirit within it and begin to act out of that spirit. So when we're reactive and passionately upset about something, we need to take a step back for a moment and say, let's look at this with the eyes of God.
Amen.
And then see what comes forward. So one of the ways we can love each other is to stop immediately giving in to our emotional habitual responses and to our ego pushing. And take a step back and go, so what is this light in me? How is this light going to respond to this situation? How's it going to do that? And then do our best to do that. And it may not be perfect, but if it's not perfect, it's going to be a lot better than if you didn't pay attention to it at all, won't it? Yeah. So that's one of the ways we can do that. And here's the last piece. This is actually from Psalm 51. And it says, "Restore to me the joy of your salvation by granting me a willing spirit." To not feed the fear in us, to not respond from ego in us when we're relating to each other, to not try to dominate one another, to not try to impose our right way of doing things on somebody else's way of doing things. To not do that, we have to be willing to love God more than our own ego. We have to be willing to love God more than our own desires. We have to be willing to love God more than the way we think it ought to be. And be willing to lay that aside. And say, so what should I say here? What is the appropriate action to take here? And if you're not right on target, as you start moving in that direction, it will kind of hone itself and get more clear. And you'll make adjustments as you need to make adjustments. But if you just ignore this inner light, and just go into your rages and your prejudices and all those other things that we're prey to, then you won't even know what that light's directing you to do, because you're not going to be paying any attention to it. We have a really nice dog, by the way. Big golden retriever, strong young guy. Really nice dog. Very friendly, really, really, really nice. And his motto is, I will do whatever you ask me to, unless I can think of something more fun. Which he usually can. When he is out, you walk him out the door, and he sees a couple of his doggy buddies next door, or a neighbor he likes, or whatever, and he goes charging over full speed to be with them. And you do the stop and the come and the return recall and all the commands you're supposed to do with dogs to get them to do it. He doesn't do a one-up. He just goes right full speed toward what he wants to do. Is it because he's being disobedient? Actually, no. Is it because he's being resistant and arrogant and stubborn? Actually, no. You know why he is? Because he can't hear anything but what he wants to do. He can't hear anything but what he wants to do. He can't hear anything but what he wants to do. Guess who else is guilty of that sometimes? And then we wonder why we charge into things and not come over and go, oh, I don't like it perfect. We need to start paying attention. And to me, that's part of what this ability to love one another comes from, is a willingness to do it and paying attention. Because if we're not paying attention, we're just going to miss what's going on. So, the last thing, I said last thing before, this is the real last thing. The real last thing is that if we were all really, really good at loving one another all the time, we wouldn't need to be taught about it, would we? So, because all the spiritual teachers throughout our history have talked about the importance of love, it means we still have some lessons to learn. So let's just begin to bring our attention inside. There really is a source of peace and a source of love and a source of joy in us. Peace, peace, peace. Let this world find peace. Love, love, love. Let our hearts have love. Joy, joy, joy. Let our lives taste joy. All we are saying is let us live as one. All we are asking is bring us home to thee. Peace, peace, peace. Let our world find peace. Love, love, love. Let our hearts have love. Peace, peace, peace. Let our hearts have peace. Peace, peace, So whatever is going on in your life right this moment, good or bad, neutral, happy, sad, hard, easy, whatever is present in your life, the Spirit of the Divine is also present. It is present at the deepest core of our being. It is present within me, and within you, and within the person to your right, and your left, and behind, and before you. It is present in life itself. But because of its subtlety and gentleness, it is easily drowned out by voices of passion, voices of rage, voices of anger, voices of fear. This moment, amidst all the voices that are present, around you and inside you, there is one voice you can trust. And one voice you can always hear because it is its will that you hear it. Let us listen to that voice in the silence together for just a few moments. When you are down, I will do my best to lift you up. When you are afraid, I will do my best to encourage you. When you struggle, I will stand beside you. And I pray that you will do the same for me.